Good afternoon. It is Monday, November 22nd, 2021, and it is 4 p.m. We're going to call to order the Ottawa City Commission study session for today. We begin every meeting with an opportunity for the city residents to come in and visit with us via public comment. Do we have individuals who have registered today for public comment?
We do, but it's on the agenda item number 4.
Okay, thank you. Next, that moves us on to items to be placed on the regular City Commission agenda, and that begins, the only thing actually on there is the minutes from our November 15th, 2021 study session meeting. Commissioners, have you had an opportunity to review those?
Yes.
Yes.
And it is the consensus of the commission to move those onto the agenda?
Yes.
I think so.
All right, we shall do so. That moves us on to items for presentation and discussion. The first item on our agenda is the review of our October monthly reports. I will begin with Mayor Pro Tem Crowley. Mayor Pro Tem Crowley, what do you have for us today?
Thank you, Mayor. Packet page 9. I'm going to steal my other two commissioners' thunder and mention that we had a really good month on sales tax. I look back and there was nothing that was more than what we had this month in the last, I think, 4 or 5 years that was on here. So that's a good sign. Just a comment there. Page 17 on our packet. Wendy, are you available?
I know I just spoke there and she said she would be. Yes, she
am.
All right. At the top of the page on page 17, you mentioned the Planning Commission, and it's not necessarily what you wrote about the Planning Commission. I noticed we had 2 openings on the Planning Commission. Do we have any applicants, or have we put that out there to fill those vacancies?
Yes, Commissioner Gloria Matthews, the city manager's executive assistant, does those notices, and she has noticed it. We did not have any applicants at this point, but today we as staff came up with a short list, and today I reached out to a couple people to at least ask them to consider it. The Planning Commission also has the blank application form, and we asked them to forward it on as well. And I'd be happy to send it to you or anyone else if you have someone in mind that might be a good fit.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. And they're both inside the city limits positions, just in case there's somebody listening that wants to know.
All right. Packet page 42. Mike Hafley, are you available? You're gonna have to explain. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You're gonna
I'm
have to
available.
explain this to me. On parks, it says removed Purple Martin houses. Can you explain that to me?
I'm trying to find it here.
Halfway down the page in parks. Packet page 42.
I'm gonna have to get back to you.
Well, we had several years ago, we had conversations about the purple Martin houses, and I believe that they're a breed of bird, and
Yeah.
that they are great at mosquito control. And so,
We always take them down this time of year, then put them back up at the end of February.
Okay.
Thank you,
So the
John.
Purple Martin is the house. I'm sorry, the Purple Martin is the bird.
Is the bird.
We're
Yes.
removing their houses.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
but then we'll put them back up because they eat lots of mosquitoes.
All right. Well, keep them up.
Well, hopefully
Because we don't need
mosquitoes
them
are
right
gone.
now. Right.
Where do they go in the winter? They go south or to?
Eat their mosquitoes.
They follow
Alright.
the mosquitoes, don't they?
Packet page 70. Terry Chartier, are you available?
Yes.
Thank you. Line item 727.00, you have I believe it's transferred to, is it Capital Improvement Fund? Is that what that is?
Correct.
Can you tell me what that
Yes.
fund is used for?
Capital Improvement Fund can be used for anything that we deem necessary, equipment that we might need, repairs and maintenance that we might need, updating shelving, purchasing desk, purchasing you know, if we remodel something, if we need to, you know, purchase another table or a study. It can also be used to purchase land. We used part of those funds when we purchased land a few years ago, along with our endowment.
Okay. And has it been used recently?
Gosh, I would have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure if we spent any of that this year or not. We are looking at spending some of it because we need to add some shelving to the teen area and the children's area. So that's actually going to be presented to my board tonight.
Okay. Yeah, if you could get back to me, I'd certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, the other, I guess we have used it for a couple of checks this year to pay Swanson House, which is our fundraising firm. Last year, we used it to pay the architects that designed our potential new building.
Okay. Thank you. And then my last one is packet page 72. This would be Main Street. I believe I saw.
I think Mary's on there.
Mary.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Mary. Are you actively searching for a director, or is that just
Hey.
kind of on hold at this point?
Well, currently Cal is the acting director. We will be searching for a director after the first of the year.
Okay.
So, we thought it would be best as a board if we waited until the first of the year. Kind of gives everybody a little bit of a fresh start and maybe have, more applicants. You know, there's a lot of job openings right now, so, and a lot of people that are looking for jobs, but I think after the first of the year, you know, we might have a better opportunity of finding someone. So that's our game plan, is to get through the end of this year, with the, you know, with what we're doing as far as the Christmas parade and the events that we've been having, and then right after the first of the year, start advertising for that.
Okay. Thank you. And that's it, Mayor.
Okay. We will move on to Commissioner Weigand.
Okay, Eric did a good job. I will get into the important things about rainfall is 50% over like last year and that kind of stuff. But the sales tax, you mentioned for the month, but for the year, we're going to be over 19.
What page are you on?
And 20, that
Pardon
is
me?
on page 5, isn't it? I'm not
It's probably
there
9
yet.
also.
Lots of pages. We're just blowing the doors off on that. What page is it? But we've still got 2 months to go. We're going to, it looks to me like if we just do an average the next 2 months, we're going to be the most we've ever received for a year. All of the, and I was looking at, since we've had some issues with fund balances, on page, actually on page 5 is where I was looking at the fund balances. They're all looking really good. The electric fund is up quite a bit. Is that unusual to be up that much over a year ago when we, beginning balance? Could we see that? It looks like it's up 4 million over beginning balance.
So it looks much higher than it was last year, but there are some larger expenses that we're anticipating as we move ahead into the new years, especially over the last couple of years. I think that Director Tharp has spoken a little bit about this over the year, that they had held back over last year and maybe even some of the year before, some of the earlier part of this year. And that
Okay.
there's quite a bit of construction and some larger dollars that you'll see starting to be spent over this next upcoming year.
Okay, thank you. General fund balance is down a little bit, but that will increase over the next 2 months probably. I paid my taxes today, so I'm sure it will. What else was there? Reserves look good. I wanted to find where I wanted to compare. The, in just looking on page 9 of the 167 pages we have, Eric mentioned this month was 25,000 over last year at this time, but for the year we're only 150,000 behind last year in total, and so we got 2 months to go on that. So shopping at home and then our expanding opportunities to shop here have been very beneficial to the city's economics and hopefully others. I think other than that, I think all I wanted to mention was that the financials are looking good towards the end of the year, and we're going to republish some things in the budget. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Skidmore?
Yeah, on page 10 I've got some things there to say. Of course, I love graphs. I went to school, studied a lot of graphs. They're a great way to communicate. However, to you husbands out there, don't use a graph to communicate your love to your wife, because it doesn't translate very well. So, believe me.
Month to month,
Yeah,
year to year,
it-
should not.
Don't use
Not
graphs.
advisable.
It's not very romantic, I guess.
That's
Okay.
probably true.
It's romantic to me, but not to everyone, so. But on the last graph there showing the sales tax totals, I think we're going to have to recalibrate this soon, because I think we're going to hit over 7 million this year. That's my guess. So we'll see if we can hit that goal, but I'm going to see 7 million by the end of this year. And on taxes like this, I mean, we celebrate, yeah, it's great to have them coming in, but we are taxing our own people, but a lot of that is from passersby. I don't know, one time I thought we thought about close to a third of out-of-towners shop here, so if this is a market center from out-of-towners, that's a great thing, and we're getting that tax that shows that, so good. I like seeing that. Very good. On page 11, let me look here. Tiffany, I guess, are you on?
She's with us today.
Tiffany's on, okay. I saw we got 28,000 in grants. 28,000 in grants. What do we plan to use that money for? What purpose?
We are dedicating those funds to pay talent fees for some larger shows next year.
Okay, so reinvesting in yourself, that's a good thing. So, all right, very good. Look forward to that.
There were qualifications you could only use those funds on, and a lot of it was to keep the venue running and expenses related to producing shows. So
That's fantastic. That's good. Always good to hear. And then the last one is on page 85, Prairie Paws. I don't know if Vanessa's here, but she didn't have to be, but I just want to say the numbers are looking really good. I know that we had some help with the government this last year, but I'm really pleased with the numbers at Prairie Paws. They're doing well, so I just want to compliment them on that. And that's all I had.
Mayor, could I ask Tiffany a question?
Yes, can you please wait until
Yeah.
Commissioner Graves has a chance to go? Commissioner Graves, good afternoon, and what questions do you have on monthly reports?
Actually, in the hopes of not having a coughing fit, I don't have any questions today.
Okay, all right.
Good.
We'll circle back around to Commissioner Wiegand. Commissioner Wiegand, what follow-up questions did you have?
I was just going to ask Tiffany, I attended the Travis Marvin concert Saturday night, as well as the one previous to that. Are those profitable? Is that kind of a community service? Do you underwrite some of that, or are those profitable events?
Sure, we do underwrite those events with sponsorships and such. They're not extremely profitable. Actually this year attendance for overall shows has been a struggle, and that's something we're seeing industry-wide. Just getting folks in feeling comfortable enough to come back out to shows. So we are trying to break even on those. Not so much profitable this year. And that's what that whole SVOG grant was designed to help us with, because the government knows that it's a struggle for us venues at this time.
Well, I thought both
Does
of them
that
were-
answer your question? We're not making bukus of money on those shows this year, for sure.
I think so. Those are, they were good shows. It's just, I'd like to just see more people there, and I'm just not sure why they aren't attending. But both worthwhile, good shows. So
Yeah,
that's all I had.
absolutely. Thank you for your attendance.
All right, and I do not have any questions. You guys asked great questions today, and I appreciate all of them. And as I say, when I don't have any questions, I feel like I have to tell all of our department heads that we do appreciate you putting together these reports, and they really do give a comprehensive look of how things are happening in the city. And if citizens have a question or concern, or just really want to know what's going on in our city, it really is a great way for you to know and take a deep dive into what's going on in our city. So I would encourage individuals to look at it, and it's there every single month. So thank you, department heads, for putting those together. That moves us on to continued discussion of our FBO operator agreement, the FBO agreement at the Ottawa Municipal Airport. And I believe Mr. Hapley will be addressing this, and I think he may have some support too with Ms. Landis.
That's correct, Mayor. Paul, there you go, it's coming. We put together a little PowerPoint here for everybody to kind of help follow along and make it easier. So Paul, can we go to the next slide? Or whoever is running it. There we go. So to highlight the advantages of an FBO, it can bring additional business to the airport. It can bring additional activity to the airport. Additional activity equals additional air traffic. And the more air traffic we get can equal more federal dollars to our airport. It also provides less expense to the city, which Melanie will dive into a little bit more. And it also takes the management of the airport and puts that on the FBO rather than that being a city responsibility. Now, we still have oversight of that because any grants we get, any projects we do out there, that'll still be overseen by either myself or whoever's in my position. So the FBO really has nothing to do with the federal dollars that we get in there as far as managing projects out there. So next slide. So we had a little conversation about the contract amount, and the contract amount is $58,000 plus 15% of the South T hangar and 90% of all other hangars. This equals approximately $82,120. Now, if we compare that to what we paid an airport manager and had budgeted for a part-time employee and benefits and all that, that total for salaries and everything was $86,450. So we're seeing some savings there. The previous FBO paid for the utilities, and we reimbursed that FBO for 55% of the utilities. However, with the addition of the 15% of the South T hangar rents, we will not be contributing anything to the utilities at the airport. That will all be funded by the FBO. And as the last bullet there states, all other facets of the agreement are the same as what we had with the previous FBO. I was also, next slide please. I was also asked to look at what other cities of comparable size were doing with their FBOs, and this is what I found. El Dorado does not have an FBO, they have an airport manager, but they do not have, let me go back, but but they have other businesses on the airport, as does Harrisonville. So both of those airports have an airport manager rather than an FBO. So there's already somebody there that's providing the other aviation type of business out there. Atchison does pay their FBO $44,000 a year plus hangar rents, but their FBO does not do any grounds maintenance, does not go out and check the lights or anything like that, or any building maintenance. All of that is done by Public Works employees. So I believe that answers all your questions that you had for me. If not, I'll stand to take any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Melanie and let her talk about the financial side of it.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
I have just one thing in looking at the proposed contract here. It says FBO shall be or must have in his employ a duly licensed qualified aircraft mechanic. And then the rest of the items, they may provide, they should,
May provide.
may
like
provide,
full-
may provide, and then this one shall. Is there any penalty if he doesn't have a mechanic for a couple months or 6 months or never gets
Well, this
one?
FBO is a licensed aircraft mechanic.
No,
Jim Reeder is, so he's covered there.
he's covered that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right.
Next slide, please. The next 3 slides are really just to give you an overview of some of the more financial questions that had come up at the last couple of conversations. This is really just a summary of the land and hangar leases that we have at the airport property. The middle column is our current city revenue, and the right-hand column is what our revenue would be under the FBO agreement. And you can see that we've just calculated the percentages that the city would keep based off of the the main hangar, the north T hangars, and the south. What you might note there is that we do have 4 hangars at the north T hangars, but we do donate one of those to Aviation Explorers. Also, we would be keeping 100% of the profit from the leases, the land leases, both for farming and Dotson Aviation. Next slide, please. This is just a summary of the airport debt, and we did talk a little bit about the main hangar debt that was out here, and we did make our final payment this year in October. The outstanding debt is on the South T hangars, and that's where we had the bulk of our conversation in one of the previous conversations. The total project cost for the South T hangars was just over $900,000. The FAA contribution was $318,000, so the city financed portion was $555,000. Our total with principal and interest was just over $650,000, and so we have a remaining balance that will be paid through 2027, and our payments annually with principal and interest are between $63,000 and $68,000, so averaging $65,000 a year. Right now, the revenue from the hangar rent is not being transferred to the debt service fund to cover these debt payments. And the reason is because that revenue from the hangar rent is being used to offset the operational costs at the airport. Remember that the airport as an operational unit is shown in its own fund, but we do transfer dollars in to help make it help the revenue be sufficient to cover the expenses annually from the general fund. So in order to not cause a bunch of chaos in transferring dollars back and forth and effectively just raising the amount that you need to use to cover operations, we just allow the revenue from the rent to cover the expenditures or a portion of the expenditures in this fund, and debt service payments are made from the debt fund, and those are made from property tax revenues.
Before you move forward, is there any way that we could move the actual video screens to the other side? What I don't want to happen is that somebody watch this back and then go like, I can't see, it says final payment October 2nd. Is there any way to do that, IT? Sorry. Okay. And then do we lose our PowerPoint? This is the
Melanie, just a quick question while we're trying to get that pulled up.
Sure.
On the farm lease, that is opened up every year, is that correct, on a bid process, or how do we do that?
Our current leases are renewable annually unless either party wants to stop leasing. So currently both, we lease out the north end of the airport, if you will, and the south end to two separate parties. And so there is an ongoing lease agreement with them.
Okay, good, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, doesn't look like we had the,
I don't know which one they're seeing.
I know, I don't
So-
know, ours shows different.
Oh,
Pardon me?
yes.
Oh, no, it's fine. I just wonder, when people are watching it back. Okay, great. Thanks, Matt.
Look at 6 years.
Okay, so as you can see on the screen then, our final payment for the 2012 A bonds was October of 21, and the final payment for the South T hangar bonds will be October of 2027 on this slide. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, this is, I know, a very busy table, but I wanted to, in case you wanted to go back and actually look at the financials, this is a summary of the airport fund financials. The first two columns are history. The middle two columns are this current year. And the right two columns in yellow is really what I wanted to show you. So the 2022 budget column is what we had planned for 22. And the right column is what we are planning for now with an FBO agreement. Excuse me. So as we do know that the revenues overall will go down, our expenditures will also be less than what we had planned for. So ultimately in the bottom, we are still looking at an increase in our overall fund balance for the airport fund, should all of this play out the way that we think it might. You can see in that right-hand column that especially down under the expenditures, we talked a little bit about we don't have the personnel expenditures that we would have otherwise. We do have the addition of the FBO contract payment of the $58,000, and you'll see that there's a decrease there in both commodities and contractual services, and those are things that largely the expense of the fuel, of course, that will go away, as well as some other smaller line items in there that, including the utility expense that would then be picked up by the FBO instead. So ultimately, in the end, we're looking at those two bottom totals and what that difference might mean for our overall financials for this fund.
Ms. Landis, on the projection for 2021, it appears as though, is that projection of a ending year fund balance of $140,000, is that relatively current?
It is, one of the things that's an anomaly in here is the $75,000 that we got back this year as a reimbursement under a grant that was for COVID expenditures, under that program. So that's a one-time revenue source, and so that is included in that bottom line. So that is going to be tough to kind of be able to, if you were to separate that out and see what the true impact is. But that's included in there, as well as one offset to that amount is the $26,000 in capital improvements, and that is for some facade updates to the hangar. Yes, to the main hangar. If you have more questions, he would definitely be able to answer better on that. But so those are two anomalies that you see in there in the 2021 projections that you wouldn't see either one of those in the upcoming years.
I have a question. The T hangars obviously are very expensive compared to the rents from them. And from what I see, is that kind of, are we competitive on our rents for T hangar space from other airports, whether it's Gardner or wherever it goes?
Yes and no, to answer your question. It really depends on the airport, what services they offer, and how new their hangars are. All that's kind of a key factor that we've worked out with, been through with the airport board. We'll be coming to you with a rate study for
Okay.
for the hangars.
It just seems to me, if I recall, the conversation last week was like we got $20,000 a year from hangar rent.
Correct.
And
on the new hangars.
Yeah, and on a $1 million facility, that's not a very good return.
It's not, and that's why private investors don't invest in buildings like that.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions on the financial portion or overall?
Just one. Going from an airport manager to an FBO, are there any insurance changes that we need that we might be able to, or less insurance that's needed now that there's an FBO? And would there be possibly any savings there?
Richard, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we need to keep our insurance to cover us.
Yeah, I'm not saying change it. I'm just saying, if the FBO carried some insurances that we carry, there's no need to double dip, and we could certainly eliminate those.
We can definitely look at that.
Well, I would leave that question to be answered by our risk management person, Mrs. Watt.
Thank you.
Mayor and Commissioners, I do believe we would be required to cover our property, if the entire property. I can verify this with our insurance broker, if you'd like me to do that.
And it wasn't necessarily the property insurance. I didn't know if there was any other insurance that we covered, due to employees or anything like that we might not need to carry now that we don't have any out there.
Workers' compensation is paid out of one line item for all employees.
Okay.
There is the airport fund day insurance that we have, and that's a separate one that's carved out. So
But-
I don't think so. It's more building
Sure.
coverage.
So Commissioner Crowley, instead of us, we'll take a look and we'll make sure we're not double coveraging, and we'll bring that back to you if that's all right.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Can we assume, though, that the FBO has the city named as additionally insured as far as anything that they might incur as far as issues?
Yes, I believe that's stated in the contract.
Okay.
Is there another? Okay. So that appears to be the end of the presentation regarding the FBO agreement. Do you have questions, Commissioners, of either Ms. Landis or Mr. Hafley regarding the FBO agreement?
No.
Would it be the will of the commission to hold on to this and discuss this at our next meeting so that we will have the information regarding any double coverage, or would you like to have that information and go ahead and move it to the agenda for our first meeting? I believe that it's on the 1st, so that we can get that executed.
I'd like to move it.
Well, this is something we need to kind of act on fairly quickly, right? Or ish. So, and the reason I say that is because we don't have a meeting next Monday, so we would be into our regular meeting. So I think the staff would do their due diligence on the double dipping and things like that. So I'd be okay with moving it to our first of December meeting.
And we'll bring you back the answer on the insurance before you
On the
take
1st.
final action on this.
Okay, good. We'll give an update there. Great. Commissioner Graves, shake your head, yes or no, or I didn't, I was like, just shake your head. Okay, so it appears as though we have consensus to place this on the agenda. Thank you for the update. I appreciate it from both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That moves us on to our continued discussion on our airport, on our Parks Master Plan, and I believe Mrs. Lee is with us today. Mrs. Lee?
Good afternoon. This is Wendy Lee, Director of Community Development. We had this plan on for some discussion last week, and Commissioner Weigand asked for a red line version, which you will find now in your packet. So that's part of what's contributing to a very lengthy number of pages for your packet today. But obviously, that's a duplication. But it does help you see that a lot of it was just some tweaking, if you will, on some of it, and other. The two charts were really just easier to show as to replace. So I'm happy to answer any other questions about this, since we talked about it last week too.
You know, and this means nothing, I guess, to the plan. I just happened to see where Kansas City, Missouri has 12,000 acres of parks. Do we know how many acres Ottawa has, public parks?
Yes, it's actually,
That's a trivia per se
yes.
question. Yeah.
Actually, it's a part of the plan that talks a little bit about
I didn't
the
see
number
that.
of acres. I'm gonna slide down to I think the replaced plan probably has that a little, well, maybe it isn't both in here, I thought it was. And we were, based on the per capita that the original group did, we were actually short. And they do that based on a lot of different cities, so it's just a comparison. But they suggested we had some areas that we needed some additional parkland. Since the initial study in '08, we have added parks. Lakeside and Walton, both were new, and now with Legacy Square as well. One of the other things, though, that they also noted was we didn't have the same level of staffing. So I'm sure Director Hafley would probably run right up there and support that. Unless we are prepared to add additional staffing, we really aren't in a position to add any more parks. We really are leaning on Streets Department to help manage and maintain the parks. I'm not finding the page fast enough, Commissioner Weigand, but there is a page that talks about each type of park and the number of acres we have in each, and the standard that the consultant at the time suggested we use.
Yeah, I see that now.
Is it page
Okay.
118?
And I do appreciate the red line thing.
Did you find it 118, possibly?
Okay, good. Thank you. I will also just note, because I noticed it and I didn't call it out, but when I was looking on today, the red line version, I also didn't include some of the maps that we'd had before, because we really haven't. That was something that the consultant did as well, and then we added some maps with the Plague Task Force and our relationship with Kaboom. But for example, the addition of Legacy Square wasn't in there. And so rather than have maps that were inaccurate, I removed them, and would say that, again, that's something else that when a new park and or park and rec plan is developed, and more discussion with the community, it'd be something good to have in there as supplemental materials, because it is helpful sometimes to see where are the aquatic facilities, where are the basketball courts. I mean, we in Ottawa kind of know where they are, but when you're comparing that, or when people maybe comment that there's something not on the southwest side of town, or there's not something on the northeast, the maps help you visualize that. We've done, I think, in the last 10 years, a real good job trying to fill in some of those, what we call park deserts. That's what Walton Park was. Legacy Square was another. But those are the kinds of things that are helpful from third parties when they look at our system, because they can produce these kinds of things. And we probably could too, if we set aside a whole nother bit of time when we have our GIS position filled. But at this point, with the staffing we had, we didn't have any ability to update the maps.
Say, Wendy, are the rail trails considered park space?
They are, and they are listed. It's interesting because I found that when they were looking at the acreages, but in one of the other places, I think I had to add some language. But while they're state parks, they are local amenities, just as you'll find that when you look at some of those charts, we count facilities and things that are on the school district sites, because they too are available to the public. And we wouldn't ever really want to put a park right next to a school district, right? That really is kind of duplicative. So when you look at the community, about the assets as a community we have, we try to count all of those things.
Good, thanks.
Well, and I mean, I think it should be important to note that, as Wendy knows, and many individuals who have been involved in the parks world, not every community has a relationship with their schools in which that their playgrounds are available at all times. We are blessed to have a school district that leaves their parks open or their playgrounds open, but that doesn't happen in every community. So it's nice that we can certainly include that.
And on page 24, that talks about acreages, and we're under acreaged on about all of our community parks, neighborhood parks, mini parks. We'd have to add more acres than you would think, wouldn't it? We'd need to add an additional 52 acres for regional parks.
Again, think of this as a plan, as a long-term goal. One of the things that's in our comprehensive plan is in fact map some additional areas that as the community expands its boundaries, that we might be able to, again, look for some parkland. And we try to have those conversations when we're doing subdivisions, as you all know, depending on the size. But those are comparisons that the consultant did based on cities, and that was done in '08. I can't tell you if, and actually coming out of COVID, it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of cities aren't looking to expand those kind of offerings because so many more people needed that outdoor space to do things in. However, it is just it's a piece of information because again, unless we're going to staff for more, just having acreage that we're mowing may not really do us the best. We're still trying to, as you all know, we're still trying to finish Freedom Park, and then we've got Lakeside Park to develop. So we've got some real good short-term goals. That just might be something that everyone needs to be conscious of, because if we were to go on the other side of Eisenhower, we showed in the long-term plan that somewhere on Eisenhower might be good for another park. And it might be a big park that has a different kind of opportunity. For example, we've had people approach us for biking amenities. Some communities have four-wheeler amenities. I mean, there's all kinds of things out there in the world if you really want to try and meet that, but we have to be able to support it and really feel like it's something our community has desired. And I really wouldn't, I think the short term for us as from Play Task Force and Parks is to have the best quality projects and areas we can with the level of staffing that we have. And right now, probably for the next 5 years with projects that are listed here, we're doing everything we can to do those. It's just a good long-term goal to always bear in mind that as the community grows geographically, we should be looking for additional parkland before that parkland has development on it and we can't use it for open space.
Wendy, I appreciate the maps. I think the maps are great. They are a wee bit difficult to read the key and information like that. Even if I blow it up, it's difficult. But I notice Orlis Cox is not on, and I know you said you didn't have a chance to update. And I get that. I didn't notice Orlis Cox on there, and I know that they have a playground there. At one point, there had been talk about the lot by the fire station to maybe in a play desert, and to be a possible playground area. And then what about the coves? I mean, we haven't talked about the coves for like 3 or 4 days now, so I mean, we should probably do that. And I think there's green space that we have set aside at the coves for park space. Is that correct?
No, you're right. This plan was well in its draft when we added the coves. So that actually is a miss. And I can probably pretty quickly add the description of coves as a pending neighborhood park. Mm-hmm. The maps, as I said, those were done much earlier. And while I'm sure that we could work with our IT department to create a map, because we do have a map on our website where we could list those things. In the draft that I gave you, I didn't include any maps. You're seeing the previous version here.
And then was there any talk with the development of, and I hate calling it this because I know this is not what it's called, but the old Lincoln School spot, was anything sectioned off there for a new park? Given that
No.
The high
Um,
density that we put new houses in there?
There was some talk of it, but at the time when they sold it to the private developer the school district retained a couple of lots, so in the meanwhile, it's open space. And there really wasn't a conversation about a playground.
But there are open spaces there, but they are retained by the school district. Still,
Right,
today.
with what we understood at the time as a possible housing project in the
Right.
future, but yes, in the meanwhile, there's at least some green space there that someone could play Frisbee or, yeah.
Okay. Other questions that you may have for Mrs. Lee regarding this document? It is a comprehensive document, and I would encourage individuals who are interested in our Parks Master Plan to please take a look at it. Other questions that you may have? No? Thank you, Mrs. Lee. We appreciate it. That moves us on to an ordinance amending the municipal code concerning the keeping of pit bull dogs in city limits. I believe we have an individual who'd like to make public comment.
We do. Richard Oglesby.
Come on up, Richard. I'm going to read, well, before you go, I have to read the paragraph. Not that you haven't already heard the paragraph 100 times, but I'm going to read it anyway. Subject to the above restrictions, persons who wish to address the city commission regarding items on the agenda may do so when that agenda item is called, like now. Persons who wish to address the city commission regarding items not on the agenda but are under the jurisdiction of the city commission may do so at the time when they're called upon by the mayor. Comments under personnel matters or on personnel matters and matters pending in court or without other outside tribunals are not permitted, and speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Any presentation is for information purposes only, and the governing body will take comments under advisement. Mr. Oglesby.
Well, I'll try to get it in 3 minutes.
Okay, excellent.
So good afternoon. I'm glad to have an opportunity to present my story to you as you consider repealing this ordinance in the city. My story is that several years back, I was cooking hot dogs in the backyard at my house for my grandsons when my son came out with his own dog, walking it on a leash. A pit bull mix in the neighborhood broke loose, came running into my yard to attack the dog that my son had on a leash. At the same time, coming around the front of my house was my grandson with another one of my son's dogs on a leash. The dog we had snatched up in the backyard, this pit bull mix suddenly took an eye for what was in the front yard, and my heart nearly stopped, to tell you the truth, to see that this dog was in pursuit to attack my grandson and the dog that he had on a leash. I told him to just drop the leash, run for the house. He did. The dog attacked the little dog, the little Yorkshire that he had on a leash, had it in its mouth, is flipping it up in the air in the horror of my grandsons watching this picture take place. We were able to combat the dog ourselves with being able to kick it and make it actually spit the other dog out of its mouth. And the owner at that time called it back. But it was one of the most traumatic offenses I have ever seen in my own property, and my grandsons were traumatized by it. And I can tell you that this is the information that you all should consider. About 90% of the reported fatal dog attacks on other dogs in 2020 were inflicted by pit bulls, as there were 87% of the reported fatal dog attacks on cats and 87% of the reported fatal dog attacks on other animals. It's a recurring pattern of denial for many of the media and others who simply just don't come to the reality that these pit bull attacks happen. And if you can find a lot of this information, if you go to Animals 24/7, and they'll tell you that beginning logging fatal and disfiguring dog attacks on humans since 1982, pit bulls accounting for, they're only about 5% of the dog population in the U.S. and Canada. They have accounted for 58% of human deaths and on dog attacks, and 76% of the disfiguring injuries that have happened in these two countries. It's horrific. And I know that many will sit back and say, well, it's how the dog is brought up and that's how it's trained. It's simply not true. There are studies out there. You can look and do the research yourself. Dogs, you don't have to train a pointer or a hunting dog. They know to point. You don't have to train a greyhound to run. They know to run. This is built into them genetically. It's part of how they are developed. It's in their genes. And I'm telling you, repealing this ordinance, your greatest charge as commissioners is to protect the citizens of this community and those who visit here. You repeal this, I know that you should consider you're putting people's lives and their children and the property of their own animals in jeopardy. I hope you really consider not doing this. And I know it's not popular with those who are fanatic about keeping a pit bull, but I hope it's the right thing that you would choose to do for our community.
Mr. Oglesby, thank you for your story, and I'm sorry for the trauma that happened to your grandsons. Did you report this dog
Yes,
incident?
it was reported.
And the owner was cited?
The owner was cited.
Okay.
But that doesn't change what they have as a memory and
No. Absolutely.
and the trauma that they incurred.
Please don't think that I was just trying to ask for
Right.
further clarification, what happened with your particular. Thank you. So, this ordinance that is listed, within our packet today, it is a modernization of our dog breed ordinances, and actually our vicious dog ordinances. It does not eliminate any dogs who are vicious. It does not make it okay, and it repeals the simple language of one particular breed of animals, but certainly does not change the fact that we recognize that there are vicious dogs. Absolutely. So, City Manager Neinstead.
I think that's as good an explanation about what you have in your packet as possible.
This is the first time you guys have had a chance to look at it. It is not an extensive ordinance. Are there questions that you have, or I'll open it up for commissioners' comments or questions.
I would say this if I could, Mayor. Richard Neinstead, City Manager. You're under no deadline to consider this.
Right.
You can talk about it for 2 weeks, you can talk about it for no weeks, you can talk about it for 6 weeks. In the past, when the commission has had this discussion, it's been a very detailed discussion. So just because it's on your agenda doesn't mean that you decide the discussion time frame on this before you decide to take action, so.
Well, I'm not sure we're enforcing this code anyway.
Pardon?
Is that a bad assumption that we're not really enforcing the no pit bulls in Ottawa?
Commissioner
ordinance?
Wygant, I can't understand you, what you talking to.
Well, I can't either. I'm sorry. I understand we're not strictly enforcing the present code we have for pit bulls. We know there's a dozen or more pit bulls
That's a
in
law
the city of
enforcement
Ottawa.
question. I asked the chief to answer.
But this ordinance, and the way that I read it, is just doing away with the pit bulls. It doesn't.
Yes.
It doesn't show the replacement ordinance.
Well, there's not a replacement
There's no
ordinance
replacement.
unless you want it. This ordinance, what this ordinance simply does, based upon discussions you've had in the past, is simply drop out the breed-specific legislation you have against that particular breed. And then, as the chief will explain, it gets wrapped into the vicious dog ordinance.
Okay, we do need something about vicious dogs, in my opinion, but, Chief.
Yeah, Adam Weigarter, Police Chief. We do enforce municipal ordinances, and the municipal court does hear those cases when referred by law enforcement, including vicious dogs and pit bulls currently.
So it's not against our ordinances to have a pit bull in the city of Ottawa,
It is currently
Yes.
against the city's ordinances to have a pit bull in the city limits.
but we do know where there are pit bulls in the city limits.
Well, yes, there are pit bulls in the city limits, and if we receive a complaint or we find those canines in violation of the ordinance, we issue those subjects a citation or refer them to municipal court.
And then what happens? The pit bull goes away?
That is up to the municipal judge based on criteria laid out in the animal ordinances about the specifics for the steps of a municipal hearing. If it's just a possession, then the owner is given the opportunity to remove the pit bull from the city limits. If they are caught again, if that dog were to return, then there are certain penalty enhancements written into the code for subjects who are repeat offenders.
Would you agree with what Mr. Oglesby just said as far as the calls for vicious animals? A majority are by far pit bulls?
No, the number of pit bulls is such a low number that you statistically could not compare it with the other animals that we get those calls on. I would agree with the scientific data about the injuries and the fatalities as a result from a pit bull attack.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Chief,
Go.
Chief, your staff is put in a peculiar situation when you show up to that call because it's up to you to determine whether that's a pit bull or not, correct?
No, it's up to the ordinance. The ordinance outlines by definition what a pit bull is.
Okay, so the way you read it, you make that designation and then you determine whether that you take that dog away from that owner or not.
If it meets the criteria written into the code and it meets the definition based on all the evidence, so the totality of the circumstances, then those officers do make a determination. If they can't, we call our animal control officer. The animal control officer has a little bit more experience and training in that. He'll come in to make a determination, and we'll refer that to municipal court. If at a court hearing there is a question, so if the owner of that canine does not stipulate to it being a pit bull, then we refer that for DNA testing.
DNA testing. Okay, thank you.
Chief Weingartner, if an individual were to call and request assistance regarding a potential vicious dog, it wouldn't matter if it was a poodle or a golden retriever. If it's a vicious dog, it's deemed a vicious dog.
That is correct.
So at this particular point, since we don't have an ordinance against a poodle or a German Shepherd or whatever else, if something happens, if a dog bites somebody, what do you do about the dog at that point?
Dog bites are covered under the vicious animal ordinance.
Okay.
And
So-
that is not being changed in this particular ordinance that is before us today.
Correct.
I mean, I guess even a Chihuahua could be a vicious animal, I guess, right?
If it bites,
Yeah,
it's deemed vicious by the ordinance
bite.
written.
okay.
Yeah, you can only assume how the name pit bull was originated. It was a fighting pit dog.
If this were to change, and the actual language of the word pit bull were to be removed from the ordinance, if you got a call and a pit bull was, an officer had determined that it is a pit bull, it would be considered a vicious dog. If
No,
the action
it would be deemed
warranted it.
it would be deemed a pit, under the current ordinance, it would be deemed a pit bull, and that is a separate violation from the vicious animal ordinance.
But if this new ordinance was adopted and you were contacted, and regardless of what it was deemed, if it had injured someone, if it had followed the criteria that deems them vicious, an individual will be cited for a vicious dog.
Yes.
Commissioners, are there other questions that you may have from our chief?
I've just got some other comments. I know along when I was about 12 years old or 10 years old, I got bit by a dog. It was a sidewalk was real close to the house. Lady was coming out of the house to get her mail. I guess the dog thought she was threatened, and so it was a small dog, wasn't big. It just bit me on the back of the leg, and it was a minor deal. But I've often thought if it was a pit bull, I may not be able to walk straight even today. I think I look at the potential of the animal. The pit bull's got so much more potential to cause damage than the dog that bit me. And I guess I'm thinking about that. I know a lot of people say they've got pit bulls. I know someone lives out of town, they've got one, and it's the friendliest animal in the world and all this. But I guess I look at the potential. I mean, I'd rather get shot with a BB gun than a shotgun, I guess, right, if I'm going to get shot. And it's like, unfortunately, I got bit by a smaller dog. It didn't hurt me. But I think about the potential. I appreciate, Rick, what you brought to us today. And I think there is something about the potential, even though maybe that was the first time that dog has ever attacked another dog. We just don't know what the potential is behind the scenes or behind the DNA, whatever it might be that's causing that. So personally, I'm concerned about doing away with this ordinance.
Well, Commissioners, this is the first time that this it's the first time this has been presented to us today. Is there a consensus to keep this on the agenda for further study?
Yes.
I think so.
I'm looking, Commissioner Graves? Just shake, yep, okay, great. Well, we shall do so then. That moves us on to resolutions to condemn unsafe and dangerous structures with properties located at 832 North Main, 119 East 8th, 623 West 5th, 418 West 1st, and 317 South Sycamore. And I believe that Terry Elmer is with us today. Hi, Terry.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Madam Mayor.
Hello.
What we have before you today is consideration for moving forward with a recommendation for consideration on 5 different properties. I know we've had these before you before. So we're looking at, we have a general PowerPoint I can share a screen with. I think you may have that in your packet. But we do have the 5 different structures that haven't had any changes on them as far as permits or any change of ownerships in the last time we presented this. So if we can go through, I can give you some basic or more information, but that same thing, nothing's changed in that information. So I don't know if you have any other questions you'd like to see some more, anything that's what you have there in front of you.
Commissioners, regarding the information that is being presented to us by Mr. Elmer, do you have any additional questions prior to this moving on to our December 1st agenda?
I don't have in regard to these. I have another question that relates to something like this, but no, I think these should be moved on.
Well, it's already on the agenda. This is just an update and just kind of a refresh, just to remind us in case we have any questions prior to the hearing on December 1st. Commissioners? I don't believe so. Mr. Elmer, thank you.
Mayor?
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, this is Wendy Lee, Director of Community Development. When we called the hearings, we actually did not have the resolutions
I
placed.
still need a key to get out. Okay.
Oh.
Terry,
Hi,
Terry,
Terry.
mute.
Hey, Terry. I think we may be looking for, okay, yes. Do you want
I'm
us
sorry,
to
I
move
got
those?
interrupted.
Mrs. Lee, would you like us to move those resolutions onto the the December 1st agenda?
yes, please.
Is that what you're requesting? Okay.
Yes, please.
Commissioners, is there a consensus to place those resolutions after the hearings on the December 1st meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, I believe there is. Thank you so much. That moves us on to our comments by our city manager.
So real quickly, Commissioners, 2 items because you have an executive session coming up. The Purple Martin capital of the world is Griggsville, Illinois. You may be able to use that in a trivia contest at some point, right? And the other thing is 58 years ago on this date, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. And that was, a number of us remember that. So as you're going,
the mayor and I were just talking about how we watched that on YouTube.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
That'd be a no for us.
But,
Not that it was a horrible thing, but that'd be a no for us.
It was a traumatic event to a large generation. And I remember very well how my brother and I delivered the Salina Journal, and we had several different specials that weekend. We lived in Abilene, Kansas, so there you go. And I'm done.
Okay. That moves us on to reports by our city commissioners. Commissioner Graves has indicated that she does not have a report, so that is an easy one to get out of the way. Mayor Pro Tem Crowley.
I have no report.
Commissioner Skidmore.
No report.
Commissioner Wygand.
I have no report, but I remember every November 22nd as the anniversary of JFK's assassination, and where I was at lunch in Iola, Kansas, attending a dairy conference that day, and it was a very traumatic thing because he was it seemed like the young people and Peace Corps and all that kind of stuff generated out of that administration, and it was disappointing to us young folks and traumatic too. I have no report for the city.
Thank you. That moves us on to reports by the mayor. There is not one today. However, I am going to make a motion that we move into executive session, or we recess into executive session for consultation with Darby Van Houten. Van Houten. I want to make sure I got that right. Our city attorney Finch has changed tremendously today. So welcome, Darby. And consultation with Darby regarding the development agreement for the Premier Auto TIF project, which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship. Attendees in this executive session will include the city manager, our community development director, our finance director, Bruce Kimmel, Tyler Ellsworth, who is here in person. You better have brought the cups. And Darby. We will, for a period of 30 minutes, to begin at, I'm going to say at 5:15 because that's what I'm going to do, and we will reconvene the meeting at 5:45. Yes.
Excuse me, Mayor, sorry to interrupt you, we just didn't.
That was the motion.
So, I would defer to Tyler on how much time he needs. Well,
Okay.
an
Mr.
hour ago
Ellsworth,
was 30 minutes.
I can modify my motion for 30 minutes. Do you feel like you need more or less of that?
Mayor, I think we can accomplish this in 15 to 20 minutes.
So it's like name that tune, like 15 notes or less? Okay. All right, so I'm going to go 20.
Okay.
And we are still going to start at 5:15 and for a period of 20 minutes. And at the end of that, I will read the announcements, but there will be no movement on or motions or any other things that will happen except for the announcements and adjournment. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we go into executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.